So far, the PhotoGRID app is able to upload the files to the S3 bucket and is able to display all the images as a gallery within the app. Now we need to build in the vote up functionality. Using the vote up functionality, the user can click on this button against the image of their choice and the vote count would be incremented by 1. So let's see how we can create this functionality. If I right click on any one of these images and if I click on inspect element, you notice that the vote up button is simply a hyperlink with a data attribute called photo ID. This data attribute contains the ID that is unique to every image in the MongoDB database. So we're going to use this ID for locating a particular image where the user has clicked and incrementing its vote count by 1. So let's see how this can be achieved. In the index.html, let's start by creating an event listener of the type click on an element called vote up. So the class of this particular button is called vote up. Create the function. The first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a variable called that, which will refer to the particular vote up button where the user has clicked, which can be accessed by using the jQuery selector of the type this. The reason we are doing that is because we're going to use the Ajax function, and because of the function scope that exists in JavaScript, the value of $this or the jQuery selector for the element this would refer to something completely different inside the Ajax function. By allocating this object to a variable called that, I can now access the data attribute as well as other elements of the vote up button which the user has clicked. So let's start by creating the URL, which in this case would be host plus /vote up, another / followed by that.data, and the data attribute is called photo ID, like so. So what it does is it fetches the data attribute called photo ID, it fetches the value of that attribute, and it appends it against the route called vote up. The next thing that we want to do is we want to create a success handler, and when the vote up button is clicked, the data attribute called photo ID, the value of the data attribute called photo ID is sent via a GET request to the Node app, and the data that is returned by the Node app is the total vote count of that particular image. This we would want to display against the image where it says 0. So to do that, first I'm going to create a variable called parse data, and the data that comes in is stringified. So I'm going to use json.parse, and we will use a data.response. Then against the vote up button, we have the image for the button called voteup.png, followed by an h4 which displays the actual vote count. To access this particular h4, we can simply do a that.find h4, and we can set the HTML or the value of this particular h4 to simply parse data dot votes. So this creates the click handler for the vote up button. Now let's go back into the routes.js and create a route for this particular functionality. So let's go into the routes.js now, and what we'll do is we'll create a new route called router.get /vote up /:ID, because we are appending the value of the attribute photo ID against the route called vote up. and this is how we are going to fetch that particular ID value out of the route. Now create a function request response next, and to find a particular record in the database by the ID, by the MongoDB ID, what you can actually do is call the single image model, which we have been using earlier also, dot find by ID and update. So this method or this function allows you to find a record by a provided ID, and it allows you to perform an update on that record in a single statement. So the first argument of the find by ID and update method is going to be the ID that we are supplying to the route, and you can extract that by doing a request.params.id. This statement, this line would extract the value of the ID that we are appending to the route called vote up. Next, what I need to do is I need to update the vote count. I need to increment the vote count by 1. You can do that by using the $inc operator, which will be set to votes:1. So what this says is that you find a record by the ID and increment the value of a key called votes by 1. Okay, so once you've achieved this, we have a callback function, and this callback function simply does a response.send. It sends in a 200 status followed by votes set to result.votes. So we are simply sending back a key called votes, which contains the updated vote count after we have done the increment in the database. So let's see if this works for us. I'm going to restart the app since the app was already running. Let's refresh, and let's try and click on any one of these images. So let's click here, and you can see that the vote count is immediately incremented to 1, and you can keep doing this, and every time that you click, you'll notice that the vote count increments by 1. Another thing that I would want to do is, now let's say if I hit refresh, the image with the highest number of votes should actually appear first. So let's say this image contains 5 votes. This should appear first, followed by this particular image, which has a vote count of 3, followed by this particular image, which has a vote count of 0. Now, the easiest way to achieve that is to go back into the routes.js, and let's look at the get images route. And we can make a tiny modification to the find statement that we have here by incorporating 2 more attributes in the method. The first attribute that I'm going to use is simply going to be a null, followed by the criteria with which you want to sort the data that is fetched from the MongoLab database. The criteria here would be sort, where the attribute called votes is set to -1. So -1 means that the highest value comes first, and then in the descending order you'll find all the records. So if I go back, let's restart the app. You notice that this image now comes first because it has the highest number of votes, followed by this image which has got the next highest number of votes, followed by the one which has the least vote count. Just one thing which I should point out is the null that we provide as the second attribute is used to return specific fields from the data structure. So since we want all the fields from the data structure, including the file name, the ID, and the word count, we simply set this to null. So this finishes with our PhotoGRID app, and we are now ready for deployment on the Amazon EC2 instance. So let's just upload one more image just to check whether everything is fine or not. Let's click on upload, and you should see a saved. There you go. And we have the image over here. So that's the core PhotoGRID app, including the vote up functionality. In the next video, we're going to go back to the Amazon Web Services console, and we're going to start creating a brand new EC2 instance.